Okay, and back for a second session with Mr. Trevor Loudon, author of many books, filmmaker, and today we're discussing his upcoming third book in a series of 6, House Un-Americans, Part 3. Back to Part 1 a little bit, because there's some tremendous information about Ilhan Omar and a number of other people you've looked into who are connected with the Communist Party in the United States.
Yeah, Ilhan Omar will be in book 3. That'll cover Minnesota. But yeah, look, Ilhan Omar is connected to Communist Party USA, Democratic Socialists of America, Liberation Road, Freedom Road Socialist Organization, the Turks, the Qatar. She was credibly named as a secret agent for Qatar at one point, and she is completely in bed with CARE, which is the front for Hamas in America. So she's involved with at least 4 different communist groups, plus 2 foreign enemy. Well, they're not legally enemies, but they work against us. Qatar and Turkey. Plus, she is involved with local pro-Hamas Islamists and Iran as well. So look, she is an absolute enemy of America, 100%. She wouldn't have one little iota of loyalty to this country. Yet,
when McCarthy removed
off the Foreign Affairs Committee, which was good, but look, she should be investigated. You know, she should be investigated by the Homeland Security Committee for working against this country, but she's not, because she's Muslim and she's black, and it's too problematic to go after people that way, and she's a Democrat. So, but she has no loyalty to this country whatsoever. None
at all. In fact, recently she made a speech in Somali. She made a speech, and I have a request into the State Department in Washington to give me the transcript, the official State Department translation of the transcript of the speech she made in Somali. And when we get a chance to look at that, because she says now that she was taken out of context and people are misquoting her, but apparently she said that she's working for the interests of Somalis and Somalia.
Yeah.
But
absolutely. Yeah. And I forgot to mention she's also deeply tied in with European communist parties too. So you know, everywhere you look, she's working against America, everywhere. Yeah. But how many Republicans call her out on this? How many Republicans even say anything? You know, when your great Congresswoman from northern Minnesota, Michelle Bachmann, went after the Muslim Brotherhood a few years ago, it wasn't the Democrats who crucified her. It was your Republicans who crucified her. It was Marco Rubio and others who said, no, you can't go after the Muslim Brotherhood. No. You know, this is the job of Congress members to keep us safe, to guard our national security. She was trying to do that, and who shut her down? Who shut her down? It was the Republicans.
Yeah, the GOP, the Republicans in name, or the rhinos, Republicans in name only, are doing a lot of questionable things. I mean, I'm being asked to not speak so much against the GOP, but the Minnesota State GOP is really problematic at this point with having no money in the bank, and people are voting with their dollars now, and they're withholding their donations because they see very little value added. There's very little return on the investment for money given to the state party of the GOP.
Look, if the GOP backed real grassroots conservatives and really flew the flag for conservatism and stopped trying to be DFL light, you would have as much money and as many volunteers as you want. Because the biggest group of a political group in America now is disaffected Republicans. People who want to be conservative, who want to get the Constitution right, who want to reduce government, who want to protect the country, and they join the GOP because they think the GOP, that's what the GOP stands for. And the GOP in many places stands for business deals and feathering its own nest and accommodating the Democrats. And so they wander off, they get disgusted. If the GOP actually did what its constitution says, it would have more members than it could handle and more volunteers and more money. But that would threaten the position of certain GOP, old guard types. And we just saw that play out in Michigan, unfortunately. So yeah, it's most Americans are conservatives. Most Democrats, grassroots Democrats, are conservatives.
Yeah.
They believe in God, they believe in country, they believe in kids, they believe in the military, they believe in borders, they believe in good education, freedom of speech, all of that. They all believe in that stuff. And if the Republican Party would actually stand loudly for it and stop compromising all the time, and especially champion social conservative issues, it would be a 70% party.
And like you said, if they stopped being Democrat light, people would come over. But as it is, so many Democrats have come over to the GOP to run as Republicans. They switch parties in the direction of the Republicans to replenish the ranks, seemingly, of the GOP, because they don't have enough candidates to run from around here. So they got to bring a couple Democrats over who say, okay, all right, I'll switch party affiliations and I'll go over their whole
policies. I won't switch my orientation. I'll just switch party. Look, and this is the argument I make. We know in red counties, Democrats stand as Republicans all the time. There's got to be much more intense vetting. You don't just say, oh, you're a Republican now, that's great, we'll get behind you. You've got to look at their social media for 10 years. You've got to look, because some people genuinely change, and you've got to vet them. You've got to say, look, when you're vetting them, and say, sir, you want to stand for the Republican Party? What will you do in this state to shut off funding to any university that denies free speech to its students? What will you do? What will you do to deregister the government unions in this state? What will you do to get the perverted books out of schools? What will you do to protect Second Amendment rights in the states? What will you do to cut off the welfare spigots to illegal immigrants? You ask them, what will you do? And that'll eliminate 90% of them straight off.
Yeah.
You stop wasting your time with rhinos and Democrat turncoats and just gutless wonders. We cannot afford any more of this. We got to have conservatives. And here's another thing. Do you have open primaries in Minnesota? I think you do, don't you?
So yeah, we had an open primary on the 5th this month. It was very strange. Yeah. It was more like ranked choice voting in some ways than it was a primary, but the ballots were, I can't explain it, because the ballots, you walked in, you didn't have to show party affiliation. Of course, you don't have to show any identification. You just give the first 3 letters of your last name. And then there's one other little piece of information, but then they hand you this opportunity to choose between 3 ballots. There's the GOP, Republican, the Democrat, and the marijuana legalization party. There's 3 piles of ballots, and then you declare if you are Republican, Democrat, or marijuana.
Well, see, what do you think? This is why Nikki Haley did well in some states, because the Democrats crossed over to vote for her to embarrass Trump, right? She got most of her voters were Democrats. So look, if you're in a Baptist church, you vote to confirm your pastor. Baptists vote on their pastor. So do the Baptists allow the Methodists and the Catholics to come into their church to vote for their pastor?
No, sir. no.
Well, why does the Republican Party, which is a private organization, allow its enemies to choose its leaders?
So
You know,
I raised that question.
you got to close your primaries.
Right.
Republicans can vote, but you Republicans for a year, not on the day. You'd be a
Right.
Republican for a year before you're allowed to vote. So you either do it through a caucus system or you do it through a closed primary. But if you do that, instead of getting 20% conservatives, you get 50 or 60% conservatives. It'll make all the difference.
Very strange. And the Steve Simon, the Secretary of State, has said you don't need to declare, well, I mean, it's the law in Minnesota that you don't have to express or register party affiliation in order to register to vote. So when they did away with that, there was no necessity for picking a side and committing to a side. Well, in that case, you don't really have major parties contending. Like, it's a free-for-all. You can decide on the day.
It's the biggest faction, which will be the unions and the DFL, because they're the most organized, will get to determine what many of the Republican candidates, who stands in the Republican line. You know,
So
the Republican Party is a private organization. Just say our primaries, only us, only we will vote to choose our leaders. If you're a Democrat, you're independent, go away, vote in your primary. You're not voting in ours. That is, open primaries are the way that rhinos and Democrats collude to keep conservatives out of office. That's all it's for.
And the candidates should probably be chosen through the caucus process, but we didn't do any selection of our candidates. I was the convener for my caucus at John Marshall High School, but I wasn't presented with any process for having participants choose who will be their candidate. We were told this year that the caucus, the primary process would be determining that. Well, when I saw the way it was handled, I decided to spoil my ballot and file a complaint at the polling station. So I filled out a report on the spot about my objections to the balloting process, which to me seemed like a complicated 3D chess level of ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
You get to choose which ballot you use, and they take your word for it. So I could have voted Democrat, and then I would have been discredited on the GOP side later if they saw that I had voted as a Democrat.
But the Democrats, it doesn't work that way, because the Democrats know that that's a tactic. That's what they do. Like if this, say there's 4 Republicans standing for a state rep position, you'll have a hardcore, good conservative, a couple of moderates, and a totally weak Democrat rhino. Who do you think the Democrats are going to come and vote for in big numbers?
Right.
And you know, and some of these races are decided by a few hundred votes, even a few dozen votes. So it only takes a local union to say, we want to send 50 people into each polling place, and we're going to vote for this weak loser Republican because he's on our side. And this is the main reason why you have such disillusionment amongst the conservatives in Minnesota, because you're a conservative, you want the Constitution, you believe in certain things, and your party will not deliver it because your party panders to the Democrats because you got open primaries.
Yeah.
No, very simple. Close the darn primary. That's why we have Ron DeSantis in Florida, because we got closed primaries. Only Republicans can vote in Republican primaries. Otherwise, we would have had the weak Adam Putnam, the rhino's favorite, and Adam Putnam would have lost to the communist Andrew Gillum, and we'd now be California in the southeast.
It is a Democrat tactic, and in the last mayoral race, suddenly the canvassing team decided to have a city primary. So the mayor was at the top of the ballot. Of course, she is the incumbent, so they had the mayor on the primary ballot. Well, you already know she's going to be running as the opponent, but they had each of the three competing people below her voting in a race against her. So that again is ranked choice voting.
They will split their vote. That's top two. That it's just that it should be first past the post. Whoever gets the most votes wins. And you get your Republican candidate who goes against the Democrat candidate or the independent or the Green or whatever, and let the best person win. None of these shenanigans, because they're all designed to weaken the conservative vote. That's all they're there for to do.
That's right. That's right. The primary process is a trial run to know how to allocate the steel potentially as well.
Yeah, well, that's another factor. Yeah.
So mathematics. If we were going to talk about part one, what would you say? We haven't talked about Alabama yet. Now, a lot of people feel like Alabama would be a hard right, a strong Republican state, and it is, and it's a patriot state. Lots of veterans, lots of hardworking people in Alabama. What do we see happening in Alabama that warrants an entry into the part one of House Un-Americans?
Well, they've got a woman there called Terry Sewell. So what they do, they carve off one black Democrat district and all the rest are Republican. But the problem with Alabama and most southern states is a lot of these Republicans were Democrats until 20 years ago. When the big Republican wave came through the South, a lot of Democrats switched, and they'll switch back if the wave goes the other way. But Terry, see in the South, in the 1960s, the communists from the North came into the South to foster the civil rights movement. And I'm not against the civil rights movement, but they wanted to manipulate it. So you had all these communist networks through the South. Well, they stayed there after the civil rights movement. And some of these guys are now in their 70s and even 80s, but they have these little networks in all these southern states. And that's what Terry Sewell is part of. She's part of this communist network in the South that's been there since the 1960s. It's based on the Black Belt of Alabama and around Utah and places like that. And so she is their little slave. She works with Democratic Socialists of America. She works with CARE. She portrays herself as a moderate Democrat, but she works with the hardest of the hard left. And now what they're trying to do is carve off a second black Democrat district in Alabama, which will basically, just help move things along. See, but you look at it. Roy Moore stood in Alabama a few years ago, remember? Now, Roy Moore was a hardcore Christian conservative standing for a Senate seat in Alabama. But he got it. They did a Me Too on him. They got in a scandal. He allegedly dated some young girl, and what they did, the left sent a whole bunch of hardcore leftists into that state, worked on the networks around Terry Sewell, and told the black population of Alabama if they voted for Roy Moore, the Republican, the Klan was coming back. The Klan was, they called it Vote or Die. That was the name of the campaign, all run by these Southern communists. And Roy Moore was defeated. And for 4 years, Alabama had a Democrat senator, Doug Jones, until Tommy Tuberville, I believe, took the seat off him in the last time. So these communist networks are in the South. They're in Georgia, they're in Alabama, they're in Mississippi. Benny Thompson, the head of the Homeland Security Committee in the last Congress from Mississippi, is completely in bed with the communists. But you think Mississippi is a really conservative state. So the whole game is this. The left are pouring resources into the southern states to activate the black populations and the Latino populations and the white college kids to start winning races in the South for the Democrats. And if they can flip 2 or 3 more southern states, they've already almost got North Carolina, they've almost got Georgia, they've almost got Arizona, they need 1 or 2 more, and especially Texas, and the electoral map will flip right to the Democrats and will never elect another Republican president. They're going into the South, because they've burnt off so many of their base in the northern states. The Democrats have gone so extreme, even the Iron Range is now turning conservative. You know, Minnesota's in play now, so they have to take the South. They bring the illegal immigrants in, they mobilize the black population, they run candidates like Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum and others, mobilize those base, Terry Sewell, and they're going to take those southern states and try and hold the line in the north. That's their strategy. So Terry Sewell is actually very important as an illustrator of what this is all about.
They're exploiting race. That's all they had, was to exploit race, and that's really a cynical, really a base way to undermine a culture and a civilization. And the communists haven't hesitated from doing that everywhere they've been, whether it's, of course, Africa, Asia, Central Asia, Turkey, Europe. Race is always exploited to divide communities and turn people against each other.
Even Ireland, the Catholics versus the Protestant in Northern Ireland, that's all communist.
Yeah.
Right? The IRA wanted a united socialist Ireland, you know. So everywhere you see racial or ethnic turmoil, almost every occasion you'll find communist agitation underneath. Because especially in third world countries where they don't have an industrial working class, the way you have a revolution is through race. Get the Hindus against the Muslims, you get the Tamils against the Hindus, you get the Mapuche Indians against another tribe, or whatever you do. And right in Minnesota, the communists are doing a lot of work on the Indian reservations in Minnesota, and of course, amongst the black and Muslim populations of the Twin Cities.
There's a lot of cash there to be had because of gambling, and a lot of those profits make their way into political activities. Is the Committee of 100 something that we should keep an eye on? We haven't talked at all about the Committee of 100. And
well,
does that relate to the 1,000 Gifts or the 1,000 Talents program?
Not directly, no, but there are crossover connections. The Committee of 100 is it's actually about 200 prominent Chinese Americans. Some of them former communists, but some business people, cultural figures. Yo-Yo Ma, the famous cellist, is part of this, and many others. And what they are is the propaganda wing of the CCP, the influence operation that works on senators. They were very close to Dianne Feinstein, for instance, who had a Chinese spy in her office for many years. Very close to Mark Kirk, the Republican former senator from Illinois. Very close to Judy Chu. Very close to Adam Schiff, who headed the Intelligence Committee. And through the Committee of 100, Adam Schiff met several leading Chinese Communist Party officials, high-ranking, of the highest rank. Doris Matsui, another one out of California, is very close to the Committee of 100, and she was the one who was very intimately involved when President Clinton was working with the Chinese. Her and her husband were facilitators in that. They were getting the Chinese influence into the Clinton administration. Uh-huh. So yes, the Committee of 100 is an extremely dangerous organization, but it has respectability. Gary Locke, Obama's ambassador to China, former governor of Washington State, is a key part of that organization.
It's astonishing to think how powerful the people who get neglected amongst the Chinese population are the individuals who've already experienced communist China, and they come here yearning to be free. Mm-hmm. Are the Guangdong, but there are the Chinese Christians that have fled as well, and they are business owners in our town, and they are not communists in any way at all. And some of the some of those individuals are astonished to see the influence of communism, just as people who fled Islamic states are astonished to see that, Islam is being propped up in Rochester to the extent that it is.
Well, yeah, like I've talked to a lot of Chinese, etc., and they come to America because America's free. America's going to stand against the communists. And they get here, especially if they live in certain big cities, and they think, this is worse than what I came from. This is terrible. People from Eastern Europe and Cuba are tearing their hair out in this country. They're going, I fled communism to come here for safety. It's what is happening in America now is exactly what I fled. Why can't these Americans see this? Yeah. And you want to talk to them, they're pulling their hair out. Yeah. They're just absolutely frustrated because they see exactly the same parallels of what happened in Cuba, in Vietnam, in Venezuela, in Eastern Europe. It's happening right where in America now. We're in a communist revolution now, and I doubt that more than 2% of America understands that.
You're absolutely right, Trevor. And I know some people from the South Sudanese community in southeastern Minnesota now, and these people from the South Sudan, the newest country on planet Earth, youngest, they understand the reasons why the South Sudan wanted to break off away from the North after centuries and centuries of enslavement and political oppression.
The Christian South being oppressed by the Muslim North. Yeah.
Right. And the Christian South is several shades blacker than the Arabized North. The Islamists in the North have had more contact with the Middle East and Egypt and so forth. So there's a racial divide between North and South somewhat, but they come to southeastern Minnesota and Rochester, and they can't understand why we're allowing Islamists to run things over them. They've expressed concern to me about the extent to which they see Islam having a toehold in important aspects of the government, because they don't think it's fair. And they fled the South Sudan. Well, they fled the whole situation in East Africa and so forth to live a better life. But that's a different matter. Are there any things to say about the Hoover Institute at this point? I mean, I was wondering, is it still pure, or has the Hoover Institute been able to research effectively the influence of the Chinese Communist Party, or are they being pressured to stand down a little bit?
Look, I couldn't answer that very well. I know there's still lots of very good people in the Hoover Institute, but I know for a long time, for instance, the Heritage Foundation was very, very weak on China. They had Elan Chow on their board, Mitch McConnell's wife. So I don't know the specific state of Hoover right now. I know there's still good stuff coming out of there, and I don't want to slander an organization I just don't know enough about.
Right, and Mitch McConnell, strangely, has had a lot of his organization and people have had a lot of influence in our area. But we can leave that alone. I've always had tremendous respect for them because of William F. Buckley, who's a great thinker and a philosopher. William F. Buckley is one of my favorite individuals. Very, very dignified man.
Yeah. So I watched quite a few of his old interviews on, was it Counterfire or Centerfire? But anyway. Something like that.
Yeah, it brings back memories. I wanted to say thanks again, and remember, we're coming up on 30 minutes past here. So TrevorLoudon.com is where you can find all of his books. And Trevor, why don't I let you have the final word? And again, it's been a tremendous pleasure, sir. It's always fantastic talking to you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Wes. Likewise. And I just want to say, the Iron Range, the old communist Finns that came to the Iron Range in the early 1900s helped to turn Minnesota to the left. Well, those people are now going conservative. You know, you've got a lot of people in the grassroots going conservative. I think there's going to be a big sweep in the upcoming election. I know there'll be vote fraud. I know there's a lot of things against us, but the mood of the people everywhere I go around this country is conservative, sick of the communism, sick of the wokeism, sick of the socialism. So hang on in Minnesota. Hang on up there, do your bit behind enemy lines, make the Democrats spend money, win some seats, and we're going to see some things that come in the next year or two that I don't think most of us could have even dreamed of. You know, this is not the same old game any longer. And so, yeah, I love Minnesota, great state, great people. I grew up reading Field and Stream magazines about muskie fishing in northern Minnesota and deer hunting and that. So every time I go up there, it's just a wonderful place to be. And the people are fantastic. So hang on in Minnesota, do your best, take back ground, and be part of taking back America. That's my message.
Thank you, sir. From your mouth to God's ears. Thank you, sir. And it's been a pleasure.
Always great, Wes. Great to see you in person one day soon, I hope. So thanks for the opportunity.
I hope we can bring you back again soon, sir. And maybe somebody watching this video will want to reach out and help make that possible. It can be done. We just need a little bit of help. So if you feel inspired by this video, reach out. Let's see what we can make happen. Let's bring Trevor Loudon back again to Minnesota. He's got the fire in the belly. So hope to see you again here soon, sir.
Okay, thanks so much, Wes. Thanks to all the listeners and watchers.
Thank you. Bye now.